And actually I've been linked and collaborating with IRASEC for about 10 years, more than 10 years, but I'm new here in Bangkok. I joined the team in September for 4 years. So just to tell you what is IRASEC, to make you to understand better maybe, is what we call in French UMIFRE. It means that we have, I would say we have two main umbrellas over us. One is CNRS, this is the largest research center with plenty of laboratories inside. And the other one is the French Ministry for Foreign Affairs. And why? Because we are a French research center, but based in a foreign country. And so we are not the only one like this. 27 research centers as this one are around the world. And 5 are based in Asia. So Japan, China, India, and IRASEC. So the particularity for IRASEC is that we're dealing with 11 countries of the region. The team working in Thailand, in Bangkok, is a small team. We have 5 researchers. 3 are based in Bangkok. 1 because he's working only in Thailand. And 2, the director and myself, we're working, as researcher, but as well, I would say, we're running the research center. And 1 researcher is in Burma, Myanmar, the other one is in Vietnam at the moment. But 3 of the team are changing every year, every 2 years, and it can be in other countries, of course. And beside our team here in Thailand, we have associate researchers collaborating, and they work on the 11 countries. So I won't read all this, but just it has been created, the research center has been created in 2001, specifically for analyzing, working on the main political, economical, environmental, social, societal changes and challenges in Southeast Asia. So this is a pluridisciplinary team with people involved in politics, in economics, in geography, in history, anthropology, etc. And so with our own discipline, we work sometimes together on a research program, or we work on different programs. Our mission is about doing research, undertaking research, and of course disseminating the research. We do have numerous collaboration in Thailand, in Southeast Asia, and also in other countries in the world. But about Southeast Asia, we support young scholars. Up to date, it was preferably there were French young scholars working on Southeast Asia. We're going to see if we can evaluate that part. And we also publish results of research program. So here are some of the books we published already. So we publish about 5 books a year. So for instance, one of the recent one, well, they are all recent actually, but one was published last year, and our friend from an escape has left already, but was published in partnership with an escape. It was about ASEAN economic community, and part of it was on inequality. So I won't go into details, but inequality is a part, of course, of sustainable development. It has been rising all over. And we saw a picture, thanks to our previous speaker, we saw a picture of France, because inequality is also a problem in France, of course. So, yeah, I said already, we work with with students, interns, and professors visiting our center. Our main partners in Thailand traditionally is Chulalongkorn University, but also Thammasat University with different departments, and also Chiang Mai, other universities, and AIT, Asian Institute of Technology. This is more recent, and this is specifically through a research program I handled with my colleague Professor Villas, and we'll talk again later. So the main research axis, just to show you that we're not working specifically on environment or urban issues, but we're working on political transition, on territorial and urban issues, social dynamics, on ASEAN as a region, and on society and environment and climate change. Our main current research axes are about society and environment and climate change. So one of them, and I will come back on it, is what we call RFCC, but it means Regional Forum for Climate Change, and I will come back in a minute on it. Sustain Asia with another team, and I will also come back on it. And another team is working on religious mobilities, and another one on dynamics of integration and vulnerabilities. So if I come back on the project funded by Regional Forum for Climate Change, that is based now, this funding is based in Haiti. The origin of this program was back in 2015, so you remember the Paris COP21st was in December 2015. 6 months ahead, there was a large international conference in Haiti as well, and it was how I met Haiti for the first time, was at this conference. So I attended, and it was done specifically for stimulating research about climate change in Asia Pacific. So we decided with Professor Villas and Professor Agung in Bali and also people from the National University of Timor-Leste, we decided to join, to form a team and to work for 2 years. It would be a bit more, but for 2 years on this highly interesting topic on coastal areas governance in the context of rapid tourism urbanization and climate change in Southeast Asia. So we were comparing, and we've done research, extensive research in Thailand, Indonesia, mainly in Bali, in Timor-Leste, in order to see how public services were, for instance, were fitting with the needs. When I say the need, is about the density, population density, and the density of commercial activities. But the other question, for instance, was this tourism resource area. You know, maybe you're not familiar, but tourist resource area are big polarities, big tourism polarities. Phuket, Pattaya, all southern Bali, etc. And we wanted to know, for instance, more about the interaction between climate change and activities, tourism development in these spaces, and also how the new politics nowadays about urbanization and tourism planning, etc., were integrating climate change consideration. So we met, we've done research, we met several times in Bali, in Pattaya, etc. And we are at the end of the program now. The second research program, quite close, but about sustainable, close to sustainable development, I would say, is what we call Sustainasia. And this is specifically a program for linking the UMIFRE. You know, I told you IRASEC is an UMIFRE, so we're joining the 5 Asian UMIFRE to work on, but you see the topic here, inclusive growth and sustainable development in Asia, governance and societies confronted to environmental challenges. We just start now, and it will be for 4 or 5 years. We had meetings already, we plan to have meetings, etc. So, I won't be long. About maybe more about education, I would like to come back to the what was said by the previous speaker. And so I taught for over 10 years at the university in France, in all field of geography, but a lot in about urban planning, urban analysis, territory planning, etc. And among others, I had for 4 years responsibility of a course for master preparing people about to be specialists of urban sustainable development of cities, or engineering of urban development and sustainable development, something like that. I don't remember exactly, but it was this. And so for 4 years, I really worked with them on the field as well. They had to do very practical exercise about realizing field work. For us, what is very important is to take into consideration one space, what we call territory. And then from that, how can you develop one territory, meaning with all these specificities, local specificities, and interaction with the outside, how you can develop it sustainably. So we were going on the field, and they had to do a lot of work, written, oral, and we had partners with local government, and all the students were supposed to work later on, to work for local governments, or to work for agencies in territory planning and sustainable development. So anyway, I also have an experience in Indonesia, and I had a long partnership with University of Udayana, Bali. For instance, through workshops and doctoral seminars, and I remember that maybe back in 2012 or 13, they asked me specifically to give a speech on how sustainable development was included into the curriculum of the schools delivering teachings about tourism. So I made many interviews for preparing this speech. I made many interviews, and at that time, almost no one actually had in this curriculum anything about sustainable development, So today is different. But just to tell you that, it's with some years difference, but 2012 is not so far, and at that time it didn't exist. So to train professionals to take care, the water, the waste, the transportation, etc. If you don't have specific courses on this, it becomes really challenging. And of course, I went many times there, but just to give you the example, this is Sanur area in the southern Bali. Just to tell you that only with a picture like this, I could talk for about an hour. Because you see so many things, because this is planning a resort or a town or whatever. I mean, that's about landscape, for instance. What kind of landscape do you want for this space, for this territory? And for instance, in Bali, there is something remarkable, I would say, that they decided years ago, I mean, long time ago, it was in the early 70s, that they wouldn't get buildings higher than one coconut tree. So meaning more or less 15 meters, it's about 4 floors, 4 or 5 floors maximum. So that's interesting, you know, and they decided also, that's a regulation, you cannot build anything within a minimum distance of 100 meters from the high tide line. That's very important, especially if we talk about climate change. With the sea level rise, if you build things too close to the high tide line, after a while we'll have problems, you know. So they have this minimum distance, and even though they have it, sometimes you can have also incident, because we know that things were, I mean, the sea level rised already. So that's important. So I don't want to spend too long time, but just to say that it's about transportation, about waste, it's about how inclusiveness, you know, as well. How first, when tourism is born, for instance, most of the time this is from the initiative from the local people with guest houses, and then 40 years later, what dominates the game is the 4 or 5 stars hotel. So excellent, then tourists have choices, but how do you manage to allow all these people to work together, not to have only one dominant player and the others cannot work anymore, you know? So this is also about this, and but also access to public services, not only for the tourists, but for the residents and for the people who work, etc. And then only 1 minute, but so I went many times also to Timor-Leste, and especially because I was lecturer at the UNCL, and they also invited me for 4 years. I worked with the Ministry of Education, specifically for working on curriculum for higher education, for all social and human sciences. I was not alone, I was working with we were plenty of people, but I was in charge of this, and surprisingly they didn't have geography curriculum. So since I'm a geographer, I took a lot of effort to build one curriculum for geography and orient it specifically to territory planning, urban planning, etc. Because I thought that here or in other places, this is very important. I mean, you need to develop a territory. It means that you need to know how to plan it. So I won't be long. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Christine. So please keep your questions. The next speaker is Dr. Clemens